Hey you guys, it's Brittany and welcome back to another installment of Snapped in Skincare, also known as Clean Skin Dirty Deeds. This week we will be talking all about Adele Craven and all that she went through to get what she wanted out of life. All her life she had goals, honey, okay? And she was gonna do what she needed to keep those goals. So if you want to hear about all the details of what happened in the case and life of Adele Craven, stay tuned. Before we hop into today's case, I want to show my gratitude to all of you who have already subscribed. Thank you so much. For those of you who have found me on other social media platforms, including Instagram, I see y'all. I appreciate y'all. Shout out to y'all for helping me to continue to grow, not just here, but everywhere. And thank you for hopping in those comments like y'all do every single week, engaging in these conversations, the tough conversations that we need to have. Those need to continue. So thank you. For those of you who are just finding my channel, welcome. Please stay a while. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the like button for this video. Also, make sure you hop in those comments and make sure you hit that notification bell so that you get notified whenever I post new content. Let's hop into today's video. Adele Craven was born in 1963 to a hardworking, working class Hispanic family in Long Beach, California. So where she grew up was a neighborhood that was full of struggle, you know, similar to inner city areas across the country. They're working class, hardworking families that are just working to make ends meet. That's what she grew up with. So at an early age, she had made the decision that she was going to make a life for herself. She was gonna lead and live a better life than the one that her family had to struggle through as she was growing up. So Adele met Stephen Craven, who was a Coast Guard pilot at the time while she was going to mortuary school, and they started dating, they hit it off, and they eventually secretly got married in 1989. Now, Stephen, they call Steve for short, he came from a middle-class family, grew up in a nice neighborhood, definitely was not going through the same struggles that Adele and her family were going through. Now, after getting married in 1989, Steve started working as a pilot for Delta Airlines. Shortly after, Adele got pregnant, and in 1991, she had their first son, Daniel. Now, eventually, Delta Airlines expanded their company and they built a hub in the Cincinnati area. So once they did that, Steve felt like it was the opportunity for them to get out of Long Beach, which they were still living in Long Beach at the time. They were able to move to this new hub. So Steve took a job at the Cincinnati hub and moved to Edgewood, Kentucky, which is technically a suburb of Cincinnati. Now, when Steve moved and took this job, he was then making $200,000 a year. So they moved into a brand new home in this upscale neighborhood called Carmel Ridge. And things were going really well for them. So in 1994, Adele got pregnant again and she had their second son, Joseph. Due to Stephen's job, and because obviously he was a pilot and he was a highly paid pilot, he was not home very often. He's traveling a lot. He's flying obviously a lot. So Adele was at home with the kids by herself most often. But Steve did make sure that when he was at home and he was able to spend time with the family, that he made the most of his family time because he understood that his job kept him away quite often. So on the outside looking in, everything was great in the Craven household. And although Adele was alone quite often, she was said to be pretty friendly, pretty talkative, easily made friends and easily to get along with. So she was never really alone when her husband was away. She spent time with neighbors and befriended a ton of neighbors in the area as friends. They were also both very involved with the church, so she made friends that way as well. Now, that doesn't mean that everything was perfect in the Craven household just because it appeared to be to friends and family. There were arguments, there were disagreements. The biggest pain point for Adele and Steve was that Adele had what Steve thought was really bad spending habits. She spent quite a bit of money. She was a stay-at-home mom, although she was a licensed mortician. She was a stay-at-home mom, and he felt that while he was away working, she would just spend and spend and spend. And it got to the point where he took away the checkbook, he took away the credit cards. She was cut off essentially. Now, Stephen was not perfect either. He would also do things like belittle her, talk about her weight, her appearance. She kind of did the same thing. She would tell friends and neighbors that he basically repulsed her. She couldn't stand her husband, but she also felt like she was kind of stuck and she couldn't divorce him because she was a stay-at-home mom, didn't have an income. He had this great, amazing job, and he was very active in the church and things like that. And she felt like if she divorced him, she would lose everything. She would never get custody of her children. So she felt like she was basically stuck in the marriage. So they both decided, and they did this a number of times, but they both decided to go to marriage counseling to see if they could work things out. And it seemed like it was helping. Things got much better between them. And by the summer of 2000, they were doing great as a couple, at least it appeared. It always appears that way. Now, things appear to be going so well that the couple decided, you know what, let's make our house anew. So they decided that they were going to renovate their entire house from top to bottom. So they hired a contractor, and they also hired his son, who also happened to be a baggage handler for Delta Airlines, the same airline that Steve worked for himself. His name was Rusty McIntyre, and things seemed to be going really well. He did most of the kind of daily handyman work, and things went so well that Rusty and Adele decided that they would go into kind of a little side part-time business together as well. So the business that they established together was doing kind of little painting jobs in the neighborhood, in the area, and that went really well too. Now, once they went into business together, Rusty bought Adele a cell phone so that he could reach her for jobs and they can talk business whenever they needed to talk business without interference. Steve was not very happy about that. In fact, they argued quite a bit about another man buying his wife a phone so that he would have direct contact with her. He was not having it, but Adele thought it made sense. Now, on July 12, 2000, that morning, Adele went to the neighbors and asked if the neighbor could watch her son while she, Rusty, and Steve met at the house to talk about some renovations that they planned on doing to the downstairs bathroom at the time. So the neighbor watched her son, and about an hour later, she came back, picked her son up, and said that she was going to run errands for the rest of the day. Now, when she arrived home later that night at around 8:30 or so, she found her door unlocked and wide open. As soon as she saw that, she went to the neighbor's house, and it was a male neighbor, so she let the neighbor know that she was very uncomfortable. She came home, her door was wide open, and she wanted a male to go and check it out. So the male neighbor went to go check out what was going on. He didn't go into the home. He went around and looked in the window. And when he looked in the window, he could see that at the bottom of their basement stairs, there was a man lying in a pool of blood, and he was not moving. So at that point, Adele immediately reached out and called the police. So when the police arrived, they found out that it was in fact Steve Craven that was at the bottom of those stairs. He was deceased, and they established that he had been attacked with a crowbar, and he was also shot. So once police have secured the scene, they go and they talk to Adele to find out what she knows about what happened to her husband. And when they talk to her, she's crying, she's all torn up, and she says that it must have been some type of burglary gone wrong. But to police, that just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense based on the crime scene itself. Doesn't look like there's anything that's been ransacked through. Nothing's been taken. It just looks like a targeted attack on Steve Craven. So after police talk to Adele, they want to run a check on Steve just to see if he's had any history or interaction with the police at all. So they start by searching the last name to see if whether Steve or Adele have had any interaction. Something pops up, but it's not for Steve. What pops up is that a patrol officer was patrolling late at night one night, and he was just doing his rounds, driving around, checking for crime. And he goes behind a church and he notices a car, a truck, and in the back of the truck, there appears to be some sexual activity going on. So, of course, he approaches, he gets them out of the truck and does his thing as a police officer who's caught some sexual activity happening behind a church. Hence, a police report has been entered into the system. Those two people who were engaging in sexual activity were Adele Craven and Rusty McIntyre. Now, the neighbors also have some tea to spill. They tell police that Rusty comes over all the time when Steve is not there. Yes, he is supposed to be there quite often because they're doing a huge renovation to their home, but he's there late at night after hours, midnight after hours, and he's staying all night until the kids are going to school that next morning. So he's not doing renovation work on the house. Also, when police search the home, they find this bag that Adele has packed. It has not clothes in it, but it has a whole bunch of underwear. It has a huge makeup bag in it. It has her passport in it. It has the kids' identification, like their birth certificates are in there. And there's also $4,000 in cash in the bag. So it's like a go bag. And the police find more. They pull records from that cell phone that Rusty bought Adele, and they find that they have been talking to each other for hours upon hours upon hours. And in fact, the day that Steve was attacked and killed, they had called each other 22 times. So it was clear that there was an affair going on and there was something else that was happening specifically on July 12th. Police also find receipts, okay? They find that Rusty and Adele have gone to a place called the Wildwood Inn, and I don't know if y'all know about these types of places, if you've ever been to the Sybaris or anything of the like, but these are places that you go to with one thing in mind, one goal that you need to achieve, and that is sexy time. So basically, it is very clear to police that Rusty and Adele are having a hot and heated affair. Police circle back again to see if they can get any more information from these neighbors. Now, I don't know if y'all are familiar with these types of areas, but I live in an area that is heavily populated with stay-at-home moms, and that is not to say that stay-at-home moms have nothing to do, because they do, but they need something to keep themselves entertained, and other people's business is what keeps them entertained. But either way, the neighbors tell them that Adele has told them that she can't stand her husband. She hopes that his plane crashes or he gets into some type of car accident, or, you know, she's considering hiring a hitman to get rid of her husband because she just cannot take him anymore. But, you know, she needs her things. She can't lose her things. So with all of this information piling up against Adele, they go and arrest her on July 21st of 2000. She is at a public pool and they arrest her very much in public. Now, they also planned on arresting Rusty, but Rusty was nowhere to be found. Rusty had actually gone on a cruise with his family because he had his own family, and come to find out, the cruise that he went on was paid for by Adele. However, the moment that Rusty returned, police arrested him and instantly interrogated him. And he broke quick. He basically confessed that Adele wanted to get rid of Steve, so he hired Ronald Pryor as a hitman for $15,000 to get rid of Steve. Police immediately arrest Ronald Pryor and immediately interrogate him as well. And he basically has the same story. They don't know that they've both been arrested. They don't know that they're both being interrogated, and they gave the same story. So police were inclined to believe that this was the truth. Ronald also went on to tell police that he took the murder weapons away from the home and he threw those away along with his boots and his bloody clothes in a landfill. So the police went to go comb through that landfill, and eventually they did find his bloody shirt and his bloody boots that had blood that was confirmed to be Stephen Craven's blood. When police talked to Rusty, he had also told them that he got rid of the remaining bullets in a nearby wooded area. So police went to go search that area, found those bullets, and was able to match those bullets up to the bullets that were found inside of Steve Craven. So to police, Rusty and Ronald are both telling the truth. They've been able to confirm everything that they've been told by both parties. So Rusty is offered a deal. He agreed to testify in court against Adele, and in return, he got a life sentence with the possibility of parole after serving 25 years. Now, Ronald, on the other hand, decided that he wanted to go to trial and chance it against a jury versus taking a deal. So in June of 2001, he went to trial. He was convicted by a jury and he was sentenced to death. I don't know what sense it made for him to chance it in trial, but he should have took the deal. Now, Adele, on the other hand, she decided that she was still going to just deny. So she denied any involvement whatsoever. So with her denying any involvement, her trial was set to start October of 2002. Now, originally, Rusty and Ronald were both supposed to be testifying in court, and suddenly, before the trial started, Ronald decided that it would be best for him not to testify against Adele in court because he felt as if it would hurt his chances at any appeals that he would have for his own case and his own sentence. So now prosecutors were down to one witness. So basically it was Rusty and his word and his story against Adele and her version of the story. So one lover versus the other. But the way that prosecutors saw this was that Adele really wanted to keep her money, her status, her children, and her mister, the person that she was having the affair with. But she wanted to get rid of her husband without losing all of that. She also wanted to collect on her husband's $450,000 insurance policy to pad her pockets even further without having to deal with her husband. So that was the motive according to the prosecution. The prosecution had at least 8 people, friends and neighbors, testify to how much Adele despised and hated her husband and how they were all told by Adele that she was going to hire a hitman. She was looking for a way to get rid of her husband. She wanted bad things to happen to her husband. So basically what prosecutors landed on was that Adele basically seduced and lured Rusty into having an affair because she saw how easily manipulated he could be, and she lured him in so that she could get him to get rid of her husband. Now, Rusty did testify, and he testified that on the morning of July 12th, that around 9 a.m., he and Ronald met at a nearby cemetery to wait for Adele to let them know when they could come over and kind of get a lay of the house and talk about the plan of how they were going to get rid of Steve. Now, apparently Steve had called in sick to work that day, and he decided that, since he could fly free anywhere, he was going to catch a flight to New York, catch a quick Broadway show with a friend that lived in New York, and he ran that past Adele to see if she was okay with that, and she agreed. Now, her older son was at day camp that day, and she had just taken the younger son to the neighbors to be watched for a little while so that she could handle some business about the house. Right after she found out that Steve was planning on leaving soon to fly to New York, she called Rusty and said, "Hey, this is the only time that you're going to be able to catch Steve alone. My kids are gone. This is the time to do it." So when Rusty arrived to the Craven home, he had come in. He had Ronald hiding in the back of his truck. He came in and told Steve, "Hey, I'm here to fix one of your faulty shower heads." And that was pretty much the premise of him being there. He showed up unannounced quite often because he was kind of the contractor doing most of the work. So it wasn't a big deal to Steve to have him show up. But while this was happening, Adele had snuck Ronald into the basement. She had also set up a mirror so that Ronald would be able to see when Steve was in the right position for him to hop out and attack Steve. So then she proceeded to tell Steve that their pet ferret had gotten loose, and she kind of lured him down into the basement, into the area where Ronald was hiding, and there was a door there. So as soon as she got him into position, she kind of quickly shut the door, and as soon as she shut the door, Ronald attacked Steve. Ronald initially attacked Steve with the crowbar in the basement. When this happened, Rusty and Adele had both gone outside, and they were kind of standing near Rusty's truck. Once Ronald had attacked Steve, he came out, kind of said the job was done, and then Adele went down to go check and make sure that the job was done. She came back and she said she saw his arm twitch, so she was not satisfied, and she told Ronald that he needed to go back downstairs and finish the job. She handed him a gun. He went back in and he shot Steve. He came back out and said he shot him. She went back downstairs to check and make sure. She still was not satisfied. So she came back out and said, no, you need to make sure that he's gone. So Ronald went back in a third time, shot him again, and made sure that he was gone, and then came back out. The whole time, Adele was there watching over, making sure that the job was done. Now, after all this happened, Ronald took the murder weapons, got rid of those, and Adele and Rusty decided that, okay, let's take Steve's credit cards. They got a $4,000 cash advance. They went and they paid a $1,300 phone bill that Rusty had that was delinquent. After that, they got themselves some lunch. And then Adele handed Rusty money to give to Ronald to give him a partial payment for the job that he had done. Adele also proceeded to tell Rusty, the longer that we wait to call the police to quote unquote discover the body, the better, because that's how much harder it'll be for the coroner or the ME to establish a time of death. She knew this because she was a licensed mortician. So they waited about 10 hours from the time that they actually attacked and killed Steve Craven until later on that night when she ran to the neighbor's house at about 8:30 at night to actually contact police in order to throw police and medical examiners off of the facts of the case. Now, Adele also took the stand herself in her own defense, and she told a completely different story from Rusty. What she said was that she did have an affair with Rusty, and of course she was crying the entire time. She said that she had an affair. She said that by the time her husband was killed, the affair between her and Rusty had been over. It had been over for a while. And basically what she was saying was that Rusty was obsessed with her. He was stalking her. And when she rejected him, it made him angry. It made him so angry that he took it upon himself to hire a hitman to get rid of her husband. Now, the jury deliberated for a while on this case, and on December 6th, they announced that they were truly deadlocked. They told the judge that they could not come to a unanimous decision, so the judge was forced to declare the trial a mistrial. Prosecutors were 100% sure that Adele was the mastermind behind getting rid of her husband, and they were going to try her again. So they were getting ready. They were all set to try her again. And what they did this time around was that they offered Ronald Pryor a deal. If you remember, he was sentenced to death. So they offered him to be sentenced to life without parole instead of the death sentence. And in return, all he had to do was testify against Adele in her new trial. And he agreed. He took it. He wanted the death sentence off the table, so he agreed to testify against Adele. So the second trial kicked off. It went on for about 3 weeks, and once Adele's defense kind of figured out that there was no way that they can win the case this time around, or at least there was no way that this would result in a hung jury again like it did the first time, they requested a meeting with the prosecution. And in the meeting, they said that Adele would plead guilty, but she wanted a deal. Prosecutors agreed, cut a deal with her, and on February 19th of 2004, Adele pled guilty to the entire thing. She said that she was the mastermind behind the whole operation. She was there the entire time that it was happening. She knew well in advance what was going to happen. She saw the attack, all of that. She was there. She was calling the shots. And in return for her pleading guilty and giving her full account of what happened, she was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 20 years. So at this point, she'll be up and available for parole in 2024. And as far as her two sons, Steve Craven's brother actually has full custody of both boys. So they are in wonderful hands. And that is the story of Miss Adele Craven and everything that she went through. Like we see with a lot of these other snapped cases, everything she went through, the lengths that she would go to keep what she had but not have to deal with her husband. Now, wrapping up this daytime skincare routine, y'all know I always have to share my fragrance of the day with you guys. So this week, my fragrance that I'm going to be wearing is going to be the KayAli Invite Only fragrance, and I just got this. I love amber fragrances, so I'm gonna try it out for the first time. I will let y'all know in the comments what I think of this one. Y'all let me know if you've tried this one before. There's a lot of mixed reviews. This one is very polarizing for the girls, so let me know what you think about these fragrances. Also, I want to hear what you think about this case. I think that this is unfortunately your standard snap case where these women who come from nothing get everything and want to keep everything, and they just tired of their husbands. I feel like divorce is always an option, y'all. You're not going to lose your children 9 times out of 10. The law is skewed heavily toward the mother in these custody cases, typically. So as long as you're not an unfit mother in any way, they're not going to take your children. So divorce is always an option. But I really do enjoy covering these snapped cases. Again, if you're not aware of how this works, I use the Snap catalog to go through and study cases, research cases to share with you guys in the order that Snapped has shown them. I typically can't even access the Snapped episodes. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but I definitely don't use it as an only source. I just use it as a catalog. So I hope you guys are enjoying this series. If there's any other cases that you guys would like me to cover, make sure you comment those down below as well. Share your thoughts on this week's case, but it's been fun. It's been real. And until next time, y'all, love you guys. Bye.